So, like so many publishers around the world, publishers of so many different stripes, Sage has come to appreciate the importance of having a good operational understanding of those who consume our products. And what we've found by applying user experience methods to the development and management of our products is that actually we don't need user experience knowledge. What we need is to understand the researcher experience. With our online publishing models moving a great deal of power to the seat of the individual reader, it's critical for us to understand our audiences, to shape our strategies for driving discovery and ensuring the delivery of our products, to make sure that we're matching our offerings to the trends and the behavior and the preferences of the market today. So whether it's through surveys, focus groups, usability testing, reading other published literature in this space, our methods for understanding the researcher experience requires organizing those researchers into some basic categories, whether it's the undergraduate with a coursework assignment, whether it's the doctoral student doing her literature review, whether it's a professor looking to submit a paper. We organize our research experience studies based on personas and use cases. There are a few basics that we've come to understand about our market and about how researchers are interacting with our content, both from our own research as well as leveraging other works that are out there in the published literature. One of those is, whether we like it or not, the majority of search does begin with the mainstream web. So an undergraduate wants a video to help answer a question, she will start with YouTube. A graduate student looking for a quick answer, learning a term that they are not familiar with, may start with Wikipedia. Whether we admit it or not, most of our searches are beginning with Google. But as they advance in study skills and as researchers move along their academic careers, we find that Sage readers do begin to shift to specialty databases, to the Google Scholars of the world, to the A&I database that may be germane in their field. And they begin their searches with those more specialized services over time. But for nearly all users, library discovery tools are most commonly employed when they're bringing up items that they've discovered elsewhere in the web, those known item searches. So most students and faculty begin to understand that the scholarly discovery process is not as straightforward and simple as we might imagine it to be. One student last year demonstrated for Roger and I and a small group of folks at the London Book Fair a common 10-step process that it takes him to follow a citation in a PDF. And he said, with a great big smile, "Look, I appreciate that there are various issues that mean that following one journal article to another will never be as easy as simply clicking the hyperlink." So we have to acknowledge that even that bright student is not some image of an ideal user. We have to come to terms, especially when it comes to information literacy skills, in particular information discovery, information seeking, and retrieval skills, that we have to strike a balance between the way researchers are doing their work today and the way that we would hope they do their work. One of my first projects at Sage, looking into the researcher experience a few years ago, we wanted to ask what social science graduate students are doing when they navigate the web in the course of a literature review. We had about a dozen participants, all graduate students, and through interviews and observations, we wanted to see their workflow beyond the boundaries of our own websites, beyond the limitations of what I could see in our own web analytics. We wanted to paint a larger, more holistic picture of their workflow. So this is what we came up with. I know you can't see a lot of detail on this slide, but I think it demonstrates that chaos, that multiplicity of pathways and avenues and options that are available to the researcher, as well as those that are employed by the researcher, This diagram demonstrates a few dominant trends that we were able to observe. For instance, aggregator and publisher websites were the dominant resources that led researchers to capture knowledge, whether downloading that PDF or exporting your citation, capturing knowledge into their own personal digital libraries. We also found some connections between different resources. We found that mainstream search activity, for instance, opened up a much broader world of opportunity, linking folks to social media and research groups, to primary sources, to news analysis, as well as academic material. And in contrast, we found that the more dedicated academic channels, Google Scholar and A&I databases like Scopus and others, clearly served that dedicated purpose of bringing researchers to their content. But we found that oftentimes those resources were not the ones to lead a searcher to other related material. It was often where they would stop, download, and begin a search again. Also, this chart does demonstrate how many students and researchers we're seeing use the library as a pathway for authentication and their avenue by which to retrieve the full text that they may have found elsewhere. So a couple of specific search trends that we observed in this study. Participants reported beginning their searches with academic databases, and that was borne out in the observational portion of the study. However, academic services received a whole lot more credence in the interview period than they actually did in the 25 or so hours of screen capture that was provided to us by these participants. We actually observed that 9% or so said that they started with an academic database. 9% said that they started with a mainstream search when actually the numbers were much, much higher. Most subjects reported being aware of risks in their mainstream search activity, but we were relieved to know that many of them put in place routines for validating authenticity. One subject shared his process and said that Google searches, I think, are helpful as long as they lead to reputable sources, so a bit of a relief. But as far as retrieval trends, we were surprised to see that 100% majority have a fully manual process for capturing, managing their citations, and their saved documents. And we put, as I'm sure many of you do, quite a bit of effort into ensuring that we're compliant with the latest citation software, that we have those lovely drop-down menus where you can export your citation. But none of our participants in this study used them. Nearly all read articles in the downloaded PDF format, not a huge surprise. Clear benefits to portability, usability, creating that personal digital library. However, we noticed that the article PDFs, of course, are missing some of the advanced features that a lot of us spend a lot of time putting in place, like those lovely open URL hyperlinks at the end of an article in the cited resources. Instead, we were watching, quite pained to see students copying and pasting a citation out of their PDF and starting a query over. So they're not always staying in the online article to use those resources. Many utilize citation metrics, but only if they were above the fold and if they were nearby the type of material that they were using to evaluate the article, so the abstract, the title, et cetera. And while 80% of participants said that the concepts in their field developed quite quickly, only a few had thought to double check that anything had changed since they downloaded the PDF. So there were some version of record inconsistencies as well. So with this view of the researcher workflow, we went on to ask what the trends are, what the uptake is for specialized researcher tools and applications, and in particular what doctoral students are using for managing their research materials. Applications like ReadCube, Flow, and others that provide services for researchers to manage their work. And there were a couple of clear benefits for those students who were using these research tools. A couple of clear benefits stood out, not unlike the benefits that they see in mainstream Google searches. Efficiency, portability, centrality, and of course, free. So just as much as they, through a mainstream search, just as much as they care about their PDF, these things are also important when evaluating a scholarly tool. We observed very little collaboration actually happening through these applications, which was a surprise to us. We were also surprised to hear that these tools weren't helping students integrate the full text and the citation data with their own notes and their own annotations. And that was something that every participant in this study mentioned was a pain point. We did talk to researchers who are not using software support in the course of their research workflow, but they reported the same needs and the same process pain points as those who were using the tools. One researcher noted that she would only consider a research tool if it could do something more than my system does already for me, she said. Mine is working just fine, and it would have to be easy for me to learn how to do it because I just don't have a ton of time. So that's not a huge surprise either. What we found in this study was that the trends, whether using a tool or not, the trends, especially for doctoral students, is the importance of building a personal digital library that one can manage, download citations and PDFs, then be able to organize them, tag them, search across them. And these students had multiple different methods for doing this, but the core function of a personal library was key for all of these doctoral students. 8 of the 9 interviewees who are using applications in their studies, research tools, they noted that easy import of citations and PDFs were critical. And if there wasn't that nice, easy plugin on their browser to just do a one-click save to their tool, they would walk away. This was an important element of why they would use it and why they would remain with a tool. Being able to customize their personal libraries was key. So what does all of this do to the SAGE strategy? How are we using this, applying this to the work that we're doing today? You may ask, so let me tell you. These researcher experience studies are part of our ongoing efforts to understand the changes in our marketplace and our role in the information and scholarly communication ecosystem. We take these research findings alongside usage data, including web analytics, to help shape our strategy for delivering content, making sure our content is discoverable. And we are doing this in particular because we want to be sure that what we're offering matches what is really going on campuses today, that we are a good player in the supply chain of which we are a member, and that we actively participate in the wider ecosystem that is the World Wide Web. So we organize our efforts in a channel model, which is not hugely unusual, I'm sure, as folks in this room are also picking up strategies that are based on how users are interacting with your content and where they come from. So we organize all of our discovery strategies based on these channels, based on where users are coming from, because our responses to those channels are slightly different. For each type of product we're bringing to market, we will adjust the strategy based on what makes sense for that user in that context. So whether they're coming from the library, whether they're coming through the open web, whether it's social media, whether it's an academic channel, or whether it's being referred within the SAGE universe. So we care about bringing users from the outside in. We also care about helping to enrich their experience and their serendipity in finding other related SAGE content. But metadata is a key portion, a key pillar of our strategy in 3 key ways. The first is our stewardship of the data that we own. We aim to be the metadata version of record for the content that we publish. We aim to ensure that we are conformant to the latest data and information standards because that stewardship is important to us. We then use that core metadata and optimize based on the channels that we may be driving the metadata so that it plays well across many different web services and applications, both on our sites as well as others. And all with the goal of disseminating and distributing that metadata as Richard Wallace says, our digital advertising functionary. That metadata is intended to be very broadly distributed, or as Lisa says, freely franchised, or as you may have read in the Scholarly Kitchen recently, promiscuous metadata. The purpose of optimizing and ensuring that our metadata is solid, is accurate, is compliant, allows us greater agility in distributing that metadata. And of course, we're always looking at what's next. The study that's going on now is focusing on what's beyond search. As Anurag said, the good old days used to be about browse, but I do believe that browse is still happening. We've been so focused on search and the search index that this current study is asking, what about the serendipitous process that researchers have? What happens when they follow that recommendation from a peer or a related link on your website or an alert in their email? How does that fit into their larger discovery process? So stay tuned, everyone. In January of 2016, the next Discoverability white paper will be available from Sage, and I hope you all will take a look. Thank you for your time.